Hello everyone, I'm Arali and today I want to talk about an elite specialization speculation that I have for End of Dragons. I'm starting out with the Elementalist, which I have named the Sorcerer. Now the Sorcerer would get a Trident weapon, which would be a 1200 range single target weapon. The reason why I'm picking the Trident is because I think a lot of people are expecting underwater weapons to become land-based, and I think it just thematically really fits. The reason why I'm doing 1200 with single target damage is because we kind of need some more long range on the Elementalist, and we've already gotten the close range weapons. I mean, we had a Warhorn that was close range, and we also got the sword, which was close range. So I think having another long range weapon, and this time having it single target, would probably fit really well. Next I want to talk about the class mechanic that the Sorcerer would get. With the Weaver, we were able to attune to 2 attunements at the same time, and kind of switch around the gameplay, and you got those combination skills, and so it was more like a fast-paced gameplay of just switching around, switching your attunements and everything. And with the Weaver was a little bit more even healing based. You know, it was a lot more about sharing auras and kind of sticking to your attunement, which I have to say that the Sorcerer would kind of take that to an extreme. What I have given the Sorcerer is what I call the Elemental Infusion, which would be kind of like Kala's Fervor, where you get a 1 stack of Elemental Infusion every 3 to 5 seconds or so, and every stack gives you like 5 to 6% more damage output. And that stacks to like a maximum of 5 stacks. But if you switch your attunement at any time, you lose all of your stacks. And so that way it kind of concentrates on you sticking to the same element. So some people might think that that's not very exciting gameplay, but I think if kind of how like the overloads in Tempest, you still kind of get to keep that excitement of, you kind of switch into the same attunement, so you trigger those traits, which I think you can still do that, except for it doesn't trigger any special effects. It doesn't trigger any overloads or anything like that. But you still get the benefit of having those traits that grant you bonuses when you attune to the same attunement. And then in the line of sorcerers, talking about traits, you could have certain things that play with the elemental infusions, and specifically I've thought of like a couple of Grandmaster traits, for example, where you would have to pick between the different traits. So one would give you maybe the elemental infusion stacks faster, so you don't have to wait as long, and you get the option of maybe even if you want to switch out on your attunement more often, because you don't have to wait as long to get those full stacks. And maybe there would be another Grandmaster that actually increases the damage, or maybe gives you might or something to make you even stronger when you have the elemental infusion at the top. Maybe a max stack. If you have all 5 stacks, it actually, instead of giving you, maybe whatever it would be 30%, it gives you like 35%. So you kind of have to like pick and choose if you want to keep with the gameplay where you switch around on your attunements, or if you want to keep in the same attunement the whole time. And maybe this doesn't sound as interesting to some players, but I think we already have pretty good options on elite specializations for the Elementalist. One that kind of gives you the possibility of using the overloads to kind of pump out, healing or, more damage or whatever, and the other one that gives you the possibility of swapping around your attunements and kind of doing like a fast paced gameplay, where I think that the Sorcerer has the possibility of really, you could concentrate on like wanting to be in one attunement. If I wanted to be a little bit tanky, I go on the Earth attunement and still am able to pump out damage because I'm getting Elemental Infusion. So my DPS is maybe not as bad. Maybe they could even work around with it and say that Elemental Infusion might not even just give you damage, but maybe it could be dependent on which attunement you're in. So maybe if I'm in water, it could give me extra healing, or if I'm in earth, it could, give me extra bleed or something, so that I could have like an elementalist that's focused on one specific thing and I don't have to switch around. I think that would be a little bit boring to some people, but I actually enjoy staying in the same attunement. I don't like having to constantly press all these buttons, and I think having it being a little bit simpler of a gameplay makes it easier for maybe casual players too. I personally find Weaver really hard to play. I do play a lot of other classes. I don't play a lot of Elementalists, but personally I don't really enjoy it because I constantly have to change, and then I have to constantly remember between all four attunements what my combination skill is. If I'm wielding a sword and a dagger or whatever I'm wielding in my offhand, and I think having it a little bit easier, a little bit simpler would give it some options. Next up would be some skills. I have thought of some fire skills that I think would really work with the Trident. For the fire skill 1, for example, they could do a fire beam skill, kind of like how the druid has a beam that you use, but all your allies that are in the beam get healed. So in the sorcerer line, you would, using a trident, you would get, you would burn every enemy that's in the line. So it's not necessarily an AoE because you're still targeting only one person, and it's only going towards that person, but if an enemy happens to walk through, you still kind of get that extra damage. And then I had an idea for maybe in wind magic, it could be like a skill 3 or skill 5 where you almost like toss a projectile at the enemy. It's a lightning ball, and when it hits in rapid succession, the enemy will get like 3 lightning strikes on top of them, damaging them, and for every strike it does more damage. So you can evade it or block it each strike, but if all 3 hit, it does a ton of damage. So it'd be good for like a 3 or 5 skill. That's usually for like damage wise. Maybe a tornado skill. I would like to see that, where you like summon like a little tornado that maybe blinds foes, or maybe knocks them back a little bit or something. That could be like a 4 or 5 skill or something. I'm thinking of like an earth skill 1, which would be maybe you jab your trident, and this earth spear comes out of it, and it's a projectile, but it's a very fast projectile, so in order to reflect it or block it, you have to be really fast on reflex. So I'm kind of thinking of like counter plays too for it. Would it be fun to play in PvP? So I think that would be interesting. Also, of course, we have to talk about the water trident on Scepter. I think that's a misused skill. I don't like it on Scepter. It doesn't really look like it belongs there. I think they should do a rework of it and use it for the actual water magic on the Trident. I think that would be nice, having it as a 2 skill or 3. You keep it as a 3 skill, and then just give something else to the Scepter 3. And then another skill that I've thought of would be maybe like some kind of like akin to like a Pokemon skill, which would be like a bubble beam. I think it would be kind of cool, having like shooting out like a beam of bubbles, and it does like 5 packets of damage, and maybe blinds them or something, or gives them some kind of other effect. I'm thinking of like a slippery, we have an oil effect now in the game, and I feel like maybe that, because it's, it's soapy water, so that you're kind of shooting at them, so they get kind of, their movement gets kind of janky. But those were just some weapon skills that I've thought of. So, and I think there's a lot of more possibilities for other ones as well. But those were just some examples that I've thought of. For utility skills, I thought maybe meditation skills would be nice, because they're not very specific on what they're used for. You get meditation skills on the Spellbreaker and the Guardian, and they just kind of do different things. So they pretty much have a big range of possibilities that they could use it for. The shouts do something specific that we got with the Tempest, and the Weaver got the stances, which do something specific. They're skills that kind of, they already have a premise to them where, okay, the shouts, you shout something and it affects allies or enemies depending on which kind of shout you're using. Reaper shouts affect enemies and stuff. So, but I think with meditation, it's kind of interesting because it doesn't necessarily, it's a meditation skill. Okay, what does it really do? What do meditations do? They have different effects. So I think they can really play around with that. I was thinking of maybe they could have one that gives you elemental infusion stacks, depending on maybe how many allies are affected or maybe how many enemies are affected. It could give you a stack of that. And it could kind of work with maybe a trait that maybe every time you get elemental infusion that it triggers an effect. So you would get the effects happening 3 times that, for that meditation skill. Or maybe just something that does like a lot of damage, maybe like almost like how mantras in the Mesmer line, just, there's that one mantra that does just like damage if you activate it, and they could be like ammunition skills. I mean, they could make meditations with ammunition skill or ammunition on it. And maybe one that kind of, because we're talking about a 1200 range single target weapon, so maybe something that gives you some distance, kind of like how you do like a lightning flash forward, but it just like teleports you back or something to kind of give yourself some room there. Because we always enjoy movement skills. Movement skills are fun, and they keep you, the game very interactive and things like that. And I think that's what makes Guild Wars kind of unique. So maybe having something like that in there. It could be a weapon skill as well to have a movement skill in there. But that's really just some ideas that I had for the meditation skills, for utility skills. There's plenty of others that they could use, but I think that's a good one to use. The last thing I want to talk about is like the overall flair of the class. I think putting it into the Canthan expansion, it works. They don't tie too many of the elite specializations to lore. I mean, they did it with the Firebrand and they did it with the Spellbreaker, but the Reaper, for example, didn't really make sense for the Heart of Thorns expansion. Same with the Chronomancer, things like that. Hollowsmith wasn't really tied in there either. It was just kind of, placed in there. So I don't think it necessarily has to fit into the setting that we're going into. But I think they could make it work in a way. So I think that really works. I think another thing they could do is to give it some visual flair, would be to have, when you're attuned to an element, you get like a ring around your arm. maybe every time you get an elemental infusion stack, have that ring grow to almost become like a gauntlet or something, or like a brace on your arm or something that indicates how high your stacks are, to give it like a visual kind of flair to it and make it a little bit more interesting, you know. Of course it would be, I'm sure, clipping, because we have huge amounts of you know, gloves that are just really big, and you know, but I don't think that would really matter that much for that. But I think that would be an interesting way to do it, you know, and depending on what we're getting with the expansion, you know, weapon wise and stuff like that, they could create a really cool Trident weapon. Maybe that gives you like gives you like different elemental flares on there or something like that. Not sure, but you know, there's many possibilities out there. I haven't really thought about necessarily like a weapon that they would do. I mean, they come up with, you know, crazy things sometimes, and that's pretty much all I have. Of course there's, you know, fine tuning and things like that it would need. I didn't think about any numbers or anything because I'm really bad at number crunching and I don't know how it would work in PvP. I think it would be fun maybe playing in a world versus world, but I think that, you know, they could tweak certain numbers to make it work anyways. You know, they've split skills between the different game modes and stuff like that, so I think there's a possibility that they could really make it work. But that was just my idea. If you guys have any ideas, let me know. I love hearing it. I love reading about them. I really do. And I just want to mention that this has been mentioned before. There was a Reddit post about someone talking about doing a Elementalist specialization that would concentrate on just having one element. So that has been mentioned, and I didn't try to steal their ideas, but I actually came up with it on my own, and I ended up googling some stuff about it, and I actually found the Reddit post, which was really interesting to read, and a lot of people were against it, which I do see, you know, there's fair points for that as well, but I think it's still an interesting idea that the other person had and that I had. And I think other people are probably thinking of something similar to it. But if you guys have any ideas, let me know. I would love to hear about it, what you guys think. And I will see everyone in the next video, which will probably be the Ranger. But I'm not 100% certain, but we'll see.